Speaker.
Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysigheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela ilitswe letu na bantu balo umiseli ukulungu kwipondo letu. Kosa sikeleli i Afrika kina abantwana bayo. Kokela inkokeli zayo yiniki ikolo i Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. Please be seated. Sit down. Just get myself sorted. Order. I have to announce that in terms of Rule 14 of the Standing Rules, today, the 20th of June 2014 at 10:30, has been determined as the date and time for the Premier's State of the Province address. I now afford the Honourable Premier the opportunity to address the House on this occasion.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Members of the Provincial Cabinet, the Honourable Mayor of Cape Town, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, members of the Diplomatic Corps, honourable leaders of political parties, members of the National Assembly and National Council of Provinces, honourable members of the Provincial Legislature, Director General of the Western Cape, heads of provincial departments, leaders of local government, religious leaders, community leaders, colleagues and friends, and as usual, most importantly, all the citizens of the Western Cape. Welcome to the opening of the 5th democratically elected Western Cape Provincial Parliament. This is my second State of the Province address this year. Since the first one in February, voters have given us the privilege of a second mandate to continue the work we have started. We will try every day to justify your faith in us. During the first 5 years in office, we put the systems, structures, and budgets in place as a firm foundation for the partnerships that are necessary to build what we call an open opportunity society for all. It is important, Speaker, to point out that this vision is actually the cornerstone of our Constitution. The concept of the open society is the first clause of its founding provisions. It is a concept contained in the very first clause of the founding provisions of our Constitution. And the rest of our Constitution sets out how each individual's rights will be protected and their opportunities expanded so they can improve their own lives. Progress is not assumed. It has to be achieved. And it is only possible if we work together. That is why we sum up our approach in 2 words in this province: better together. Madam Speaker, this government's primary contribution towards progress is to continue redressing the legacy of apartheid through opening opportunities and ensuring that people have what is needed to use these opportunities to improve their lives. We agree with President Zuma that the most effective starting point in the fight against poverty is to get a job. It is also the point of departure of the National Development Plan, a framework for growth and progress supported by all major parties in our country and by this provincial government as well. Every proposal in the NDP is designed to create...
Order.
All major parties.
Honourable Member.
I repeat, Madam Speaker, supported by all major parties in South Africa and by this provincial government as well. Every proposal...
Order, Member. Member Paulson. Order, please. Member Paulson, kindly refrain from interjecting. Proceed, Madam Premier.
The EFF is another kind of party. It's certainly not a political party, Madam Speaker. Every proposal...
Member Paulson, kindly refrain. Thank you. If I can remind you, it is every Member of Parliament's duty to conduct themselves in a fashion that is parliamentary, and you need to respect the House and the Constitution. So I'm calling you to order, and I do not expect you to interject again. Thank you. Proceed, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Every proposal in the National Development Plan is designed to create the conditions for job-creating economic growth. And we also agree with President Zuma's SONA statement that this can only occur if there is increased investment, particularly in the productive job-creating sectors of our economy. We have already politically and publicly committed to being a pioneering province in implementing further aspects of the National Development Plan. This requires three components. It requires competent government, active citizens, and committed leadership in all spheres of society. We will fulfill the competent government requirement, but we cannot do this without the full cooperation of competent national and local government, given the division of powers in our Constitution. We must work with leaders in the private sector and civil society as well. But in the end, it is the collective effort of every individual citizen, of every single one, to contribute to development by using the opportunities and making the most of their lives. This is the engine that drives development. South African citizens need to demand as much from themselves as they do from their government. Today I will outline some of the key priorities we will focus on during our second term in the life of the Fifth Parliament. But before I begin, Madam Speaker, I would like to welcome the many new members recently sworn into the legislature on all sides of this House. Our government recognises the crucial role a strong opposition plays in a constitutional democracy, and I sincerely hope that constructive dialogue and debate will supersede obstructive, polarising politics during our sittings. Let us begin this term, Madam Speaker, with consensus on one point at least, that we all want the Western Cape to succeed because we want South Africa to succeed. I look forward to working with all parties to achieve this objective. Madam Speaker, as I've already stated, the Western Cape government supports most of the objectives of the NDP. Our provincial development plan, extending to 2030, will coordinate the plans and actions of all government role players and ensure that the budgets of all organs of state are aligned to achieve maximum socio-economic impact. In other words, what the government does must be aligned to change people's lives. We recognise that municipalities are the coalface of service delivery, and we plan to further enhance our municipal support programs for sustainable development. One of these interventions is the violence prevention through urban upgrading, which is commonly known as the VPUU. This was a contract, indeed, signed by my predecessor as the Mayor of Cape Town, Noma Indiam Feketo, in 2006, and picked up by me a couple of weeks later when we won the election on the 15th of March 2006 and were able actually to implement this project. And it has been one of the path-breaking projects, and we are now able to extend it across the province, backed by a significant new investment of 71 million rand from the German Development Bank into the Drakenstein and Theewaterskloof municipalities, with a matching amount from the provincial government in Saldanha, Swartland and Breede Valley. And I know that the Mayor of Drakenstein is here today, and I'd very warmly like to welcome her here today, as well as all the other local government leaders who are here to say thank you very much to the confidence and trust that the German Development Bank has that this investment is worth expanding. This program has already increased living standards and brought down crime significantly in Harare Khayelitsha, where it has been implemented. So far, the German government has invested over 250 million rand in this crucial project, which has been extended to other nodes in Cape Town. We are pleased that the German government believes the social return is good enough to expand this work, and I would like to congratulate all involved. Madam Speaker, both the NDP and our government recognise that infrastructure investment is essential for growth. Over the next 3 financial years, we plan to spend over 14.5 billion rand on maintenance and new and replacement infrastructure in this province. One of our main priorities is making the Western Cape a leader in broadband access. This is essential if we want to grow the economy, create jobs, and become internationally competitive. Over the past 2 years, our broadband project was delayed by the enforcement of national compliance requirements, which threatened the delivery targets we set ourselves. This, Madam Speaker, has been a source of intense frustration to us. I am therefore very pleased to announce today that the Western Cape Government, the State Information Technology Agency, and Neotel signed a strategic agreement this morning to provide broadband services to approximately 2,000 government sites, including and most particularly to schools, libraries, and health facilities over the next 2 to 3 years. By May 2016, all sites will be connected with minimum speeds of 10 megabytes per second under this agreement. By August 2018, most sites will be connected by fiber optic cables, with 90% of these sites enjoying 100 megabytes per second speeds and 10% enjoying 1 gigabyte per second speeds. Our government is also committed to ensuring that our communities can tangibly benefit from this agreement. Neotel has therefore generously agreed to funding the infrastructure rollout of 384 Wi-Fi hotspots using Western Cape government buildings, which will cover almost every ward in this province. Our government will be subsidising the free portion of citizens' internet access through these Wi-Fi hotspots. The Wi-Fi hotspots will be rolled out over a period of 4 years as Neotel builds the fibre network. This means that every citizen will have the opportunity to access limited free internet at the Wi-Fi hotspots across the province. And so, around the Wi-Fi hotspots, in every single ward almost across the entire province, citizens will have access to a limited amount of free Wi-Fi. We believe the rollout of these hotspots will be a game changer for development. It will reduce the digital divide, make economic opportunities more accessible, and generate new business opportunities. To this end, the Western Cape Department of Economic Development and Tourism will also establish a new business incubator to support entrepreneurial talent and aspiring techies in disadvantaged communities to develop software and innovative applications. And this one is going to be situated at the borderline on Lookout Hill between Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha, serving that entire community with the most extraordinary access points. Our internationally acclaimed bandwidth barn has achieved outstanding success, and it is time to replicate this concept. Neotel is also committed to spending approximately 25% of the value of their contract with local companies. They will use a number of small businesses as well as local labour during the construction of the network, creating jobs throughout the province. They have also agreed to provide seed funding for the establishment of a Western Cape broadband foundation, which will focus on leveraging private sector contributions and funding to help deliver innovative broadband-related services as widely as possible across this province. I would like particularly to welcome Mr. Sunil Yoshi, the CEO of Neotel, who is here as a special guest today sitting in my box. We look forward to working with you, sir, and with CETA to deliver this groundbreaking project over the next few years. I would like to thank Mr. Freeman Nomvalo of CETA in his absence for helping us cut through the endless reams of red tape. But thank you for sticking with us, thank you for persevering, and for making this groundbreaking contract so developmental and available and accessible for all residents in the Western Cape. Madam Speaker, we also agree with the NDP's premise that small and medium-sized firms are the key to economic growth and job creation in South Africa. The NDP envisages small and expanding businesses potentially creating 90% of jobs in the country by 2030. However, this is only possible if South Africa offers a welcoming and enabling environment for entrepreneurship. This is what our government's entrepreneurship and enterprise development programs aim to do. Through our 20 access points across the province, we will continue providing business development, procurement support, and access to finance to thousands of small, medium, and micro enterprises. Over 179 million rand has been budgeted for these programs over the next 3 years. The Red Tape Reduction Unit will continue working throughout the province to make the province an easier place to do business. We will also ensure that any new measures introduced by our government do not increase the regulatory obstacles of doing business in the Western Cape. Madam Speaker, we also plan to challenge any new legislation or policies or regulations introduced by any other sphere of government that makes it difficult for businesses to start, grow, and prosper. A good example, Madam Speaker, is the immigration laws recently introduced by the National Department of Home Affairs, which threaten the film, business, and leisure tourism industries. President Zuma indicated during his State of the Nation address on Tuesday night that the national government aims to increase the contribution of tourism to the country's revenue to more than 125 billion rand by 2017. If he is serious about achieving this aim, he will call for an urgent review of these new laws. If he is serious about growing jobs, he must demonstrate that through government action, not say one thing and then promptly do another. We have already arranged top-level engagements with the Department of Home Affairs on this legislation. If this fails, we will consider initiating or participating in litigation on this matter. That's how seriously we feel about it, because it will undermine South Africa's prospects for tourism growth in the years ahead. These kinds of laws destroy economic growth, penalize law-abiding citizens, and are largely unenforceable against people who enter South Africa illegally. If we make jobs our priority, young entrepreneurs are South Africa's greatest asset, and we need to attract them and retain them and develop them and build them. I am therefore delighted to welcome Drs. Yassine Khan and Mohammed Dalwai, who are two local entrepreneurs and the founders of the Open Medicine Project in South Africa, a non-profit organization that aims to improve healthcare by developing innovative, technological, clinical tools for health practitioners. Now, I met them once before at the Bandwidth Barn when I was introduced to their concepts, and I'd like to see where they are now. Great doctors, thank you very, very much for being here. We met when I saw your app for the very first time at the Bandwidth Barn. I was so impressed that I introduced Minister Botha to it. He picked it up and ran with it, and the story that I have to tell today is the result of that. And thank you for being here as our special guests. One of the tools they have developed is an app for nurses in waiting rooms at community health care centres. The app allows nurses to triage patients and is aimed at creating shorter waiting times at health facilities. The Western Cape Department of Health piloted this app at the Khayelitsha District Hospital. It was so successful that we are investigating implementing the app at all emergency centres in this province in the future. So thank you very much for a great idea. And the Honourable Opposition can clap too at that kind of entrepreneurship in this province. That's right. Then we come to Ms. Nisreen Bulbulia, who is also here today. She's the co-owner of the airport shuttle company called City Hopper. I'm sure we've all seen that. Last year, at the age of 24, Ms. Bulbulia's company won the Etea Award at the National Lilizela Tourism Awards, which recognizes excellence in black-owned small businesses. Her business employs over 40 young people from disadvantaged backgrounds and focuses on teaching them the necessary skills to become successful entrepreneurs in the tourism industry in the future. Where's Ms. Bulbulia? Okay, she's not here yet, but when she comes, please ask her to stand. She can interrupt me, I don't mind, because entrepreneurs are the most important people we have in this province, far more important than politicians, because they get out there and create the jobs. And our job is to create an environment that attracts that kind of investment, that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and that ensures that we can grow the economy so that more people get jobs. Finally, I would like to welcome Thembi Tsotetsi, who co-owns Culture Glass in Khayelitsha. Where's Ms. Thembi Tsotetsi? There you are. Well done. Two years ago, Ms. Tsotetsi noticed that there was a need for an affordable glass-fitting business in the area, particularly for uninsured taxi drivers who could not afford to fix their damaged windscreens. Like all entrepreneurs, Madam Speaker, when she saw a problem, she sought an innovative solution to turn into a business. Last year, she participated in the Small Business Academy Development Program offered by the University of Stellenbosch Business Schools, which provides training to SME owners to make their businesses more sustainable. Thembi came top of the class. She says the skills she acquired have revolutionized her business. She currently employs 4 people and has big expansion plans nationally. These 4 young people are examples of what can be achieved if citizens are willing to work hard, find and use their opportunities, and take responsibility for improving their lives. In the process, they are meeting society's needs and transforming the lives of others. And we salute you here today. Madam Speaker, we will also continue to focus on growing our key job creation sectors in this province. First, our tourism industry is one of our biggest revenue generators and employs over 150,000 people. The tourism sector had one of its best seasons ever last December, reaching pre-recession levels. This trend has continued during the first half of this year, which is unusual, and we will continue to strengthen our international marketing to grow the tourism industry's contribution to our region's gross domestic product from 10% to 15% by 2020 and increase the number of visitors' arrivals by between 3 and 5% off a very large base already, and that we are determined to get right. The Western Cape has also positioned itself as the leading call centre destination on the African continent. There are currently over 40,000 people employed in the province's business process outsourcing sector. We aim to create 70,000 work opportunities over the next 5 years by continuing to market ourselves as the leading offshore hub for the BPO and ICT industries. And on a regular basis, I meet delegations from around the world who are attracted by our skills base and our capacity in this field, our time zone, and all of the things that come together. And it really is wonderful to see a sector take off in this way because so many things have come together. And I'd like to also thank PEPESA very much, which is our special purpose vehicle, which has played such a crucial role in this process. We will also focus on the aquaculture industry, Madam Speaker, which will help bring down the high unemployment levels in many of our rural and coastal towns. Currently, the sector employs around 2,300 people in the province, which is 78% of the total number of workers in the industry countrywide. A study conducted by the Western Cape Department of Economic Development has estimated that in order to maintain the current level of fish consumption worldwide, global aquaculture production would have to grow from 45.5 million tonnes a year, which was recorded in 2004, to 80 million tonnes by 2050. That is almost double. This increasing demand is a major opportunity for the province's aquaculture industry, and we intend to seize that opportunity with both hands. We have, in partnership with the Western Cape Aquaculture Development Initiative and the Matsikama municipality, identified Doringbaai as a potential aquaculture hotspot in this province. Plans are already underway to expand the existing Doringbaai abalone farm, the first community abalone farm in the country, to a 300-ton production facility. We have also identified 2 additional suitable sites in Doringbaai for abalone and or salmon farming, and 2 investors have already committed to invest more than 500 million rand during the first phase of development there. The production capacity of abalone farming in Doringbaai is planned to grow to 1,000 tonnes from the current 300 tonnes. It is estimated that approximately 1 direct job and 1 indirect job will be created for every tonne of production. Doing the maths, these 3 projects should create 2,600 jobs over the next 4 years and will stimulate job creation in related industries. The Western Cape government has committed 1 million rand to facilitate the environmental impact assessments on the identified sites in order to unlock these investments as soon as possible and with the least possible red tape. We also plan to apply to the National Department of Trade and Industry to declare the area between Hermanus and Gansbaai a special economic zone so that abalone farmers receive special tariffs and incentives in order to increase their production, grow real jobs, and reduce poaching. We will also continue to push for the development of the 12 small fishing harbours during this term. If various national departments continue to block our efforts in this regard, we will resort to the legal remedies available to us. It is time to remind national government that while we are committed to cooperation, the constitutional mandate for small harbours lies with local government. We have already put national governments to terms as far as their tardiness has been concerned, and we will take the next legal step soon. And in this connection, I am very pleased to note that Minister Pravin Gordhan is the new Minister of COGTA, and we will using his good offices to the full to ensure that cooperative governance really begins to work in South Africa. The oil and gas sector will also remain a priority sector. Over the past 5 years, we focused on the development of the Saldanha Industrial Development Zone, which was officially launched at the end of last year in rather controversial circumstances, as you will recall. We intend positioning this zone as the key logistics hub of Africa for the oil and gas servicing industry. We are investing nearly 90 million rand into the IDZ over the next 3 financial years in order to manage the planning and implementation of the project and to develop skills so that people qualify for the jobs that eventuate from this investment. We envisage that the oil and gas sector will create 13,000 jobs by 2020. Last week, Madam Speaker, I hosted a media briefing where I provided an update of some of our key achievements in the Western Cape green economy since we launched our Green Economy Strategic Framework last year. Most significantly, our investment mapping found that an estimated 20 billion rand has already been allocated to actual and planned investment in the renewable energy sector in this province. The proposed establishment of a clean tech special economic zone in Atlantis is another important achievement. We've also made major progress towards becoming the leading renewable energy centre in South Africa, and we now house much of the high-level expertise and development capacity in this field, which is always followed by increased investment. This trend, Madam Speaker, will continue with the establishment of the South African Renewable Energy Technical Centre. SARATEC is the new acronym that you all have to learn, at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, which will provide specialised training for the renewable energy sector. The Western Cape Government, through its special purpose vehicle Green Cape, is providing support to the centre, and the first student intake is expected next year. Madam Speaker, we are also investigating alternative greener fuels, with natural gas being a key priority focus that complements our energy shift to renewables. We are also working with municipalities on smart grid technologies to increase efficiencies in electricity distribution and in revenues. We remain committed to safeguarding our natural assets. Excuse me. We remain committed to safeguarding our natural assets that are the bedrock of tourism and agriculture, as well as certain manufacturing industries. The twin crises of electricity shortages and climate change have actually created many new entrepreneurial opportunities, and we are positioning the Western Cape to make the fullest possible use of them. Madam Speaker, the agricultural sector remains one of the most important generators of growth and jobs in this province. It has the potential of revitalising rural economies and transforming the lives of our most marginalised communities. That is why we remain committed to supporting small-scale farmers and agricultural empowerment projects, as well as increasing market access for our province's export products. Europe is still an important market for South Africa and the Western Cape, even though agricultural exports flattened during the period 2009 to 2011. These exports have picked up again and increased from 14.4 billion in 2011 to 20.2 billion in 2013. However, the recent economic downturn in Europe had a negative impact on our region's agricultural exports, which has highlighted our over-reliance on the European market. We need to continue focusing on exploring and growing new markets, especially in Asia and Africa, while maintaining our existing relationships with our traditional markets. Africa is envisaged to have the highest population growth globally over the next 90 years, more than tripling from the current 1 billion people in 2011 to 3.6 billion in 2100. Now, this is an enormous opportunity for South Africa and our economy. And it is crucial that our province targets the demand for agri-exports that will arise out of this population growth, and for all of the things that we can do well in the Western Cape, from which not only our country but our continent can benefit, Speaker. That is why it is encouraging that our exports to Africa have increased from 960 million rands worth in the agricultural sphere in 2001 to 6.4 billion in 2013, with greater growth to follow. We will also continue to prioritise our broad-based black economic empowerment initiatives aimed at increasing market access for black smallholder and commercial farmers, and 12.5 million has been budgeted for our market access programs over the next 5 years, from which 91 farmers have already benefited. Madam Speaker, we welcome President Zuma's announcement that the national government aims to speed up land reform and provide technical, infrastructural and financial support to smallholder farmers. We will continue to lobby national government to provide the funding needed to expand the highly successful equity share schemes in the Western Cape. These projects are the most successful examples of land reform in the entire country, and they've resulted in real empowerment of beneficiaries through skills transfer, security of tenure, and shared ownership in the farming business. We will also continue our farm worker surveys to ascertain service delivery priorities across the rural areas of this province. They will be completed in the Cape Winelands, West Coast, and Eden District municipalities during the current financial year, and will then move to the Central Karoo and the Cape Metropole. We will engage all three spheres of government to meet the service needs of farm workers, as we all have different mandates in this regard. We will also expand our flagship Farm Worker of the Year competition. This year, more than 1,000 farm workers have entered from 16 regions, and it means an enormous amount to the workers who participate. The Western Cape Department of Agriculture also plans to spend 163 million rand on skills development programs targeting youth in the agricultural sector over the next 3 years. As President Zuma said, agriculture is the area where we can create the most jobs going forward. Skills development as a whole, Madam Speaker, remains one of our top priorities. We agree with the NDP that education and skills development are critical to creating sustainable employment. It is no point growing the economy and not having the skills to meet the jobs created through a growing economy. And I've also noticed that people only want to invest where they know the necessary skills base exists. So, having the appropriate skills in this province is essential to attracting investment, growth and jobs, but it's also essential to ensure that our people can benefit from the fruits of investment, growth and job creation. One of the major threats to the future growth of our key economic sectors is the shortage of specialist skills in a number of fields, including the financial, engineering, ICT, artisan and green sectors. Those are all sectors in which we think that our economy will show substantial growth in the years ahead, and we as a government have to make absolutely sure that the skills to support that growth are available, because that is what will attract investment here, and we're not competing with other provinces in South Africa only. We are competing with the whole world in this regard. And so we have to make sure that our region is attractive because we have the skills here. The Western Cape Department of Economic Development and Tourism has also budgeted 128.7 million rand for the next 3 years on skills development programs. Madam Speaker, we will continue our highly successful Premier's Advancement of Youth project that provides internships for matriculants with on-the-job training in government departments for a year. And I would like to thank all of the government departments, every single one, that was so committed and involved to this program over the past years. And we are particularly pleased, Madam Speaker, that President Zuma announced that all government departments nationally will now be required to follow suit. Last year, Madam Speaker, we also launched the Artisan Development Program in partnership with the private sector, Skills Education Training Authorities, and FET colleges. The initiative aims to create a pipeline of qualified artisans who can contribute to growing the emerging sectors of our economy, particularly the oil and gas industry, for which many artisans are needed and many trained people are required. We have received an overwhelming response from young people who have struggled to find placements at companies to complete their in-service training. 10.8 million rand has been allocated to this program over the next 3 years. Madam Speaker, we also placed 1,000 young people at companies at the end of 2013-14 financial year under our Work and Skills program, which is our version of the youth wage subsidy, and will place an additional 750 learners in each of the 2014-15 and 2015-16 financial years. Our government has also started working on the development of an e-skills platform that will serve as an integrated tool for government, higher education, and the private sector to engage one another in order to match skills development programs to current skills shortages and for citizens to access career-related training and advice. And that partnership is essential. Business must know that we're working hard with the education sector to ensure that they can expand because the skills they need will be available. However, we also recognize that the most important skills interventions we can make is ensuring that every child has access to a quality basic education that will enable them to take advantage of their future opportunities. Just over 4 years ago, the Western Cape government released its strategic plan to improve education quality up to 2019. Halfway through this period as we are now, we can say that we are making good progress towards achieving our objectives, which include improving language and mathematics in our primary schools in particular as the foundation for all further schooling, improving the number and quality of passes at the National Senior Certificate, reducing the number of underperforming schools, and particularly increasing the retention rate, reducing the dropout rate at schools across the province. What we have today, Speaker, is a maturing provincial education system which has responded positively to a number of systemic improvements over the last few years. During our second term, we will continue implementing this plan and ensure greater stability in our system to maintain continuous improvement in education. The bulk of our education budget will continue to be spent on underprivileged learners, and we are investigating additional ways to provide food and other poverty alleviation measures over and above the many programs we already have in schools serving the poorest quintiles of our learners. Our key focus areas will be improving language and mathematics outcomes. That's absolutely critical. Central to this strategy will be the improvement of classroom practice, specifically the reading of more complex texts and extended writing, with support from the department through the provision of additional learner support materials, curriculum advice, and additional time spent teaching. Now, Madam Speaker, I'm going to pause here to make what I think is a crucial point. I read an article in the newspaper the other day that said that once we get a fully broadband functional education system, teachers won't have to mark papers anymore because it'll all be done by computers. Now, that is not going to happen in the Western Cape, because as clever as computers can be, Madam Speaker, they do not have the capacity to mark long texts. They only have the capacity to mark multiple choice questions and answers. And the result of that kind of testing is becoming apparent through the outcomes of our education system, with children really battling to write anything longer than a couple of words and to read complex texts and analyze them. And so we will continue putting an enormous investment into the traditional methods of teaching literacy, reading complicated texts, understanding complicated texts, and writing in plain and clear language. We will also improve the quality of leadership and teaching in our schools and enhance accountability both at district levels and at schools. All schools will be required to continue setting improvement targets in each grade, especially for literacy and numeracy. These targets will be used as benchmarks for evaluating their performance, particularly in the management of schools and districts. We will also be investigating the possibility of further incentives for schools and educators based on performance. And we think that that kind of system is long overdue, because our best educators work extraordinarily hard and take enormous responsibilities and get the same remuneration as those who hardly do anything and shirk as many responsibilities as they can. And it's time to get an effective performance-related career path and pay system into our education. Then we also are going to support the strengthening of school governing bodies. School governance is becoming an increasingly complex and demanding task for a large body of volunteers. We will streamline and strengthen their training ahead of the 2015 school governing body elections to focus on leadership, management, financial management, and disciplinary processes. And if I may just add, it's also crucially important to show school governing bodies the limits of their power, because they're also accountable to the law and the Constitution, and their job is to improve education at schools, not use their power to enrich themselves or to wield power inappropriately in the school context. We will also create and welcome environments for optimal learning. We will continue to work with other government departments, most importantly the South African Police Service and civil society, to improve school safety. This year we will also expand our cooperation with the Metro Police in order to promote greater community involvement in schools. And I would like to thank the Metro Police through the Mayor for coming to our rescue in the crisis in Manenberg. It wasn't their mandate, but they came and made Manenberg safe again for our children to go to school. And it's critically important for the SAPS to take on this mandate of policing our streets. We will also improve infrastructure and facilities at schools. We will continue to build schools in areas with expanding needs and replace schools with inappropriate structures. While we have increased the school maintenance budget by more than 50% over the last 3 years, we plan to direct even more money towards maintenance in the future, which is essential to creating conducive learning environments. We will also improve access to learning support material. We will expand the use of technology inside the classroom, as well as providing additional resources that can be accessed from home. And one of the things that we often don't take into account is how difficult it is for children in disadvantaged, crime-plagued areas to have technology because of the rate of theft and crime in communities where laptops and tablets are still relatively rare. And so these are some of the major challenges we're going to have to face if we want to bridge the digital divide and enable all children to have access to technology-enhanced learning. Through the provincial government's broadband project, we will also improve the technology infrastructure at schools for teaching and learning, and I hope they won't be locked up in the computer room as soon as the lesson in ICT is over, and will be available 18 hours a day for children to actually use the computers and get onto the internet and make sure that they are using their skills to benefit their education, not simply technically learning how to use a computer, but in fact to apply that knowledge to advance their education. We will continue to conduct rigorous competency testing for our matric markers and systemic internationally benchmarked language and mathematics testing for all learners in grade 3, 6 and 9 in order to determine the level of learners' ability so that we can identify and target weaknesses and improve outcomes. We are still, Speaker, the only provincial government conducting both these kinds of tests. And the systemic testing in grade 3, 6 and 9 should not be confused with the annual national assessment tests. We do additional tests on international benchmarks because it's not good enough for South African pupils only to be able to compete with each other. We have to make sure that our children achieve international benchmarks, because what is good enough for the rest of the world is certainly good enough for South Africa. We believe that holding our schools, teachers and learners to a much higher standard is the reason why we have seen a gradual improvement in both mathematics and language outcomes at a foundation phase, and the number and quality of passes in the National Senior Certificate over the last few years, and long may it continue. Madam Speaker, meeting the health needs of an ever-expanding population with a limited budget requires innovative thinking and strong partnerships with the private sector, and our two doctors here today are an example of that. Our second term will be guided by the Healthcare 2030 framework, which was developed in conjunction with a range of stakeholders and strategic partners in the private sector and civil society. The framework was endorsed by Cabinet and will now be converted into key priorities that we will focus on over the next 5 years. This will include spending nearly 3.3 billion rand, Speaker, on new health facilities and upgrading existing clinics and hospitals over the next period in office. We will be replacing a number of clinics, including those in Prince Alfred Hamlet, Wolseley, Beaufort West, Sedgefield, Napier, and Villiersdorp. We will also be building new or replacing community day centres in Hermanus, George, Ravensmead, Hanover Park, District 6, Ceres, Kayamandi, and Vredenburg. There will also be upgrades to a number of hospitals across the province. Despite sustained progress, there are, Madam Speaker, a number of social challenges we face that compromise our education outcomes and that profoundly threaten the security and safety of our province and threaten job creation, particularly amongst our youth. And these problems include the increasing number of people abusing alcohol and drugs in this province. I don't know how much more one can do to educate people on the risks and dangers of dabbling with drugs and of drinking, but this problem continues to rise in this province. Secondly, the constant gang violence in hotspots and the recruitment of ever younger children into gangs. And then the trend, and it's a growing trend, unfortunately, towards unprotected sex with multiple sexual partners as well as intergenerational sex. And that is what is driving our HIV pandemic. We have the world's best treatment program in the Western Cape, the world's best and most comprehensive treatment program. But our prevention programs are failing because we are failing to curb multi-partner, concurrent sexual relations and intergenerational sex. And that is something that people don't like to talk about. We're going to talk about that in the Western Cape, and we're going to be sure that we do something about it. There have to be some taboos in a society, especially when certain behavior has such profoundly negative consequences. And unprotected sex with multiple partners is not a private issue. It has massive social consequences and costs this province and our country billions of rands, and means that there is a trade-off which results in people with unavoidable injuries and illnesses not getting the treatments they deserve. And so we have to really deal with that issue. And then, as an outflow of that, the growing number of teenage pregnancies. It is a very great challenge to us, and young girls who have babies usually doom both themselves and their babies to a lifetime of poverty and disadvantage. And we have to stop that so that women get their education before they make a rational choice as to when to become a mother. And often, tragically, these girls have no choice at all in the matter. We have struggled to address these challenges during our first term in this government. This is mainly because our provincial government can't solve problems on its own. We need all government departments and institutions, civil society, communities, and particularly parents and individuals to play their part. Madam Speaker, no government can compensate for the role that responsible, committed parents must play in the lives of their children. This is the bedrock of a functional society. Studies have shown that a functional father figure often makes the difference between a child's future success or failure. It is therefore highly concerning that currently almost 60% of Western Cape children grow up with absent fathers. Far too many men, Madam Speaker, make babies and walk away from them. We want to make it much, much harder to do so. And we will continue our campaign to ensure that maintenance defaulters are blacklisted by credit bureaus. That maintenance defaulters are blacklisted by credit bureaus. Madam Speaker, our youth development strategy, launched earlier this year, focuses on interventions to provide support to young and vulnerable parents and caregivers. These include providing them with information on child development and strengthening their capacity to care for and support their children through mentorship and training programs. One of the big problems is that a young teenager is not programmed to take on the responsibilities of being a mother because they're still focused on themselves and what they want to do with their lives. And every one of us who's ever been a mother knows that when you have a baby, it's not your life that is the focus of attention, it is your child's life and your child's opportunity. And you can only think like that when you've been through your own teenage years and been through your own stages of development. We will also continue to create safe spaces for young people where they can learn, take part in recreational activities, and be exposed to positive role models and messaging. One of our government's flagship interventions under our youth development strategy is our after-school mass participation opportunity and development program. We call it our MOD program, which started 4 years ago. There are now over 181 MOD centres based at schools across the province, which offer learners a safe, fun place to play sport, participate in cultural activities, and study after school. The Western Cape Department of Social Development also supplies meals to all learners attending these MOD centres every day. The interest shown by learners when it comes to attending their local MOD centres has been increasing, and we plan to do a lot to attract far more young people into a fun space in the afternoon, a creative space in the afternoon, rather than hanging around on street corners. An example of a really well-functioning MOD centre is at Detainen in Worcester, where nearly 200 learners attend the after-school program every day. 2 years ago, the centre started focusing on baseball while continuing to run other cultural and sporting activities. 2 of the members of the Detainen baseball team have now been selected to represent Boland in the Provincial Baseball League. And if it hadn't been for the MOD Centre, they would probably never have held a baseball bat in their hands. And now they have got something constructive to do, and they feel affirmed and part of a provincial team. And Leyden Andrews was recently selected to play in the South African under-15 team that will be participating in the under-15 Baseball World Cup. Now, we are thrilled by that because we believe that if you want to transform sport and ensure sport development, you start at the grassroots, spotting young talent at schools, and that is what we want our MOD centres to play a part in. So that is what we mean by expanding opportunities so that our young people can use them. And even those who never make a local or national team will still have the fun and the adrenaline and the team spirit of playing together with their peers in constructive activities after school. There's also a close relationship between learners and coaches at the Detainment Centre. Coaches are regarded as mentors by learners and are often asked for advice on a wide range of social issues. Now, I think it's very important to understand that when young people are teenagers, they need to cut the umbilical cord with their parents, and they need other parental role models to relate to and to speak to outside of their families. And the big attraction of gangs, I believe, is that that need is supplied by belonging to a gang. And of course, if you can belong to something more constructive and have affirmation through that, that will change many, many young people's attraction for gangs. And this is the role that the mentors and coaches are increasingly playing. Our aim is to replicate the successes of Detainment at all our other mod centres in the province, and many of them are working as well, so that as many young people as possible are kept off our streets and away from drugs, alcohol and gangs, so they don't have to get their affirmation and sense of belonging through substance abuse. We will also be using the MOD program to launch an exciting new initiative called our Youth Gap Year. And this will be a volunteer program which will start at the beginning of next year. We've noticed that many, many young people come from overseas wanting to volunteer in South Africa for a gap year. There are many South African youngsters who want to take a gap year. And we're saying, why don't we coordinate those activities and make the Mod Centre programs in the afternoon available as sites for people to spend their gap years constructively, tutoring pupils with their homework in subjects with which they may be familiar, teaching music, starting sport and coaching sports, and doing all of the other things that children in many advantaged schools can take for granted because their teachers are prepared to stay on throughout the afternoon and offer these programs, which is tragically not the case in many of our schools serving disadvantaged communities. So during the second half of this year, we will be inviting qualifying school leavers, and it's going to be a hard program to get onto because you have to really be able to add value in the mod centres. So we'll be inviting qualifying school leavers and university graduates to apply. We aim to sign up in the first year 120 volunteers for our mod centres who will begin tutoring at the beginning of the 2015 school year. We plan to expand the program to 300 tutors in the medium term. Another example of a safe space created by our government is the highly successful Youth Cafe in Rocklands, which was opened by the Western Cape Department of Social Development in January, and where young people can participate in a range of entrepreneurial skills development programs. I was then absolutely delighted to see the technological innovations used for a whole range of things, from counselling to entrepreneurial skills development. Minister Albert Fritz will be launching another youth cafe early next month at the Vangate Mall in Athlone, and we aim to continue opening more youth cafes in partnership with the private sector in other parts of the province in the near future. It's a fantastic concept because there is a new form of money that people can collect by doing good works, and then they are able to spend that money in a whole range of ways, and it has its own unique monetary system and works extraordinarily well, and is very exciting for the youth to get involved in. We also plan to replicate the successes we have had at our Chrysalis Academy in other parts of the province, and you will all recall that it was our Chief Whip, Honourable Wiley, who started this concept. This program offers at-risk youth a structured residential program where they receive occupational and life skills training, which offers further education and work opportunities. The European Union, I'm delighted to say, has made funding available to establish a similar youth academy at Wolvekloof in Ceres, and we are deeply grateful for this. I know that Wolvekloof in Ceres was a huge headache and problem for a previous government, but we plan to turn that into a second Chrysalis Academy, and we now have the resources and the funding to do just that. Honourable Doug Moore claims the Chrysalis Academy as an ANC idea.
Order, order.
When I went to see Wolverkloof, it was anything but a functional program. But with our investment and commitment, it will become a second Chrysalis. The Provincial Department of Social Development will also focus on expanding non-residential diversion programs for young offenders over the next 5 years. We also implemented a comprehensive plan to tackle substance addictions in the province during our first term. While the Western Cape Department of Social Development increased its treatment capacity to nearly 5,000 patients per year and grew the number of treatment programs it funds from 7 in 2008 to 24 this year, we still have waiting lists of 3 to 6 months at many treatment centres due to the growing demand for its services. And this is one growing demand that we really do not want to see, Speaker. In particular, the need for specialised treatment programs for children and adolescents is becoming increasingly urgent as the average age of drug-addicted patients continues to drop. We are having primary school children coming in to be treated for addictions, Speaker, and this is extremely worrying because it impedes their brain development and their brain function, and they will, if they continue, never be able to function as normal adults. And equally, if pregnant women use drugs while they are pregnant, the results can be absolutely horrific, as I have seen myself in various of our institutions. In order to address this problem, the Provincial Department of Social Development intends introducing drug treatment programs in all of our child and youth care centres over the next 5 years. Can you imagine that that would have had to be possible? But it is, because many of our young children who get caught up in crime are already addicted. The first of these programs has already been introduced at the Horizon Child and Youth Care Centre in Eerste Rivier. It will also be necessary to introduce drug prevention programs in all our mod centres. And there's so many NGOs doing marvellous work in a whole range of fields. Unfortunately, when they go into schools during school time, they disrupt the core teaching and learning program. The mod centres will be an ideal platform for them to come and do all kinds of innovative work, and I hope including drug education and prevention in our mod centres. Another major challenge we face is the abuse of alcohol in our communities. A recent World Health Organization global status report found that South Africans aged 15 years and older consume an average of 8.2 litres of pure alcohol per annum, which is well above the global average. Madam Speaker, alcohol abuse has a myriad negative consequences for our society, including fetal alcohol syndrome, which severely stunts children's mental and social development. It increases risky sexual behaviour, teenage pregnancies, and the spread of AIDS. It has an increase in patients with chronic diseases and trauma-related injuries, fatal crashes on our roads, and violent crime, particularly domestic violence. Most domestic violence is alcohol-fueled. A cross-sectional study conducted by our government in trauma units in Khayelitsha, Nyanga, and Elsie's River over a one-week period found that alcohol use was reported or suspected in 53.2% of all violent injuries. We would solve the crisis in our clinics and in our hospitals if people did not abuse alcohol. It is as simple as that. The patient load of trauma would reduce, according to this research that we've done, by 50%. And that is why it is such a critical challenge for us. We've introduced a range of interventions to tackle the scourge over the last 5 years, including passing the Western Cape Liquor Act aimed at restricting access to alcohol. The Western Cape Liquor Act gives the authority a range of interventions geared towards eradicating alcohol abuse and enforcing liquor bylaws at legal outlets, and unfortunately, it doesn't adequately tackle the availability of alcohol at illegal outlets, which has to be the next major focus. The Western Cape Government's Traffic Department is the only traffic department in the country to operate on a 24/7 basis, conducting weekly alcohol road blitzes and roadblocks, which has helped reduce road-related fatalities by 28% since 2009. However, it is clear that our government interventions are not enough to tackle this serious problem. Alcohol abuse remains at dangerously high levels in all our communities. Citizens, and especially parents, must start taking responsibility for their own and their children's lives. Parents particularly have to be role models in the moderate use of alcohol and in not taking and abusing drugs, because this is a really terrible scourge which is destroying an entire generation in our province. It is far more prevalent than most people in this house think, even if we think we know it is very serious. It is far more prevalent and destroying entire communities. And if children go to school with fetal alcohol syndrome, and they are a significant number in the class, it means that every child who hasn't got fetal alcohol syndrome has to go at the rate of the slowest child, which means everyone's education is profoundly undermined. More importantly, it is critical that the SAPs clamp down on the thousands of illegal shebeens operating in our province. Only the police have the legal authority to shut them down, and our partnership with the police must ensure that they do. The Western Cape government will focus on bringing all relevant role players together over the next few years so that we can fight the scourge in a systemic, coordinated way. We don't want to prevent people from having an evening drink in relaxed surroundings, but we simply have to stop the substance abuse that is destroying our young generation at a rate that few of us can comprehend. This is accompanied by a growing gang culture, which is spreading to more communities with devastating consequences for the entire fabric of our society. Functional families are the best counter to the attraction of gangs at an age when teenagers feel the need to belong to a group. The Western Cape government's focus on a whole-of-society approach to increase safety remains one of our top priorities. We will continue building on the partnerships we've created over the last 5 years, such as strengthening community police forums and providing equipment and training to neighbourhood watchers, as well as deploying safety coordinators in all 150 police precincts. However, these community structures cannot act as a substitute for a fully functional criminal justice system that arrests, prosecutes, convicts, and jails perpetrators of crime without fear or favour, particularly violent crime. These are all functions of the national government. The powers of the province in policing are confined to oversight of the SAPS. The Department of Community Safety is making good progress in implementing the Western Cape Community Safety Act. We recently advertised positions in the Office of the Provincial Police Ombudsman and are currently interviewing applicants. This office will be up and running by October and make a big difference. In terms of the Act, in consultation with various stakeholders, we will then appoint a suitably qualified person with experience in the field of law or policing as the Provincial Police Ombudsman. The Ombudsman will have far-reaching powers of subpoena and to investigate reports of police corruption, abuse of power, or alleged police service failures. We will continue to lobby national government to reinstate specialised gang units in the Western Cape and to release crime stats on a more regular basis. Both these interventions are also supported by the NDP, and if the government supports the NDP, let it please implement its key provisions. Once again, we see how the national government's rhetorical commitment to the NDP is undermined by its own actions. The work conducted by the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry into allegations of police inefficiency has received widespread media attention. We await its recommendations in August. We will seek to work cooperatively with the police over the next 5 years and provide them with the support they need to maintain law and order. We hope that with the appointment of the new National Minister of Police, Mr. Nkosinathi Nhleko, our province's relationships with the SAPS national leadership will improve. We plan to introduce new targets to bring down deaths and injuries on our roads, including special targets for child road safety. We aim to refresh and rejuvenate our highly successful Safely Home campaign over the next few months so we continue leading the country when it comes to making our roads safer. Finally, you'll be pleased to hear, Madam Speaker, I've left the biggest challenge we face for last. It's the biggest challenge, it's also the most complex challenge. which is building integrated and sustainable human settlements in this province. This is essential for improving social cohesion and redressing the legacies of apartheid. With a housing database of over 500,000 households in this province, which grows daily as urbanization escalates, we have estimated that it will cost over 70 billion rand to provide land, services and top structures to everyone who needs it. And another really astounding statistic, Madam Speaker, is that if everybody who is currently living in Cape Town is to get a house, our society will have to build as many houses again as have ever been built in the city before. Now that is the scale of the challenge we face, and it is a challenge that will only grow. 70 billion rand that this will require is almost double the budget of the entire Western Cape government. What this means, Madam Speaker, is that we cannot continue with business as usual.
Honourable Member.
Is there a 15-year-old here that can help the honourable member find the off button?
Order.
I thought that was a new form of heckling, Madam Speaker. What this means is that we cannot continue with business as usual in approaching human settlements. We need new and improved strategies that harness households, the private sector and NGOs to place the Western Cape on a different housing trajectory, one which offers an improved living environment for everyone. More importantly, we need to change the current perception shared by far too many in South Africa that government is solely responsible for providing free housing to everyone who needs it, because it is clear that the available resources and the escalating need will make this impossible in the immediate term and will possibly take centuries. Instead, we need to come up with innovative partnerships and solutions to improve people's standards of living in the province at a much faster pace. It is also crucial that citizens become directly involved in human settlement projects instead of waiting to receive a house. We are currently working on a new housing model that incorporates innovative partnerships and strategies together with the City of Cape Town and other municipalities. While we harness this new approach, we continue to deliver on our commitments. We will be focusing on a number of housing projects during our second term, including accelerating the completion of the N2 Gateway Phase 1 by 2017, completing the planning of Phase 2 of the N2 Gateway that will deal with Barcelona, Kaka, Kanana, Vuk'uzenzele, Kosovo and Europe informal settlements, and will provide 26,000 new homes when completed by 2020. Completing the 2,000 units in block PHP projects by the end of 2015 and 2016 financial year, and no, I'll tell you, it's interesting. I think. That's right. But I had a plan B. I had a plan B. Thank you very much. Completing the 2,000 units in block PHP projects by the end of the 2015-16 financial year. Completing the Transhex Klipvlakte projects in the Breda Valley, which will deliver 3,000 units. Finishing the Vredebes farm housing project in Witzenberg, which delivers 3,000 units. The KwaNokutula project, which will deliver 1,360 units, and completing the Saferfontein project in George, which will deliver another 5,000 units. Madam Speaker, it is critical that all three spheres of government work together to come up with new pioneering models to deliver integrated human settlements. The current housing challenges we face across the country must not be politicised, either in government or on the ground. The worst blockages to housing delivery are the fights over control of these projects within communities themselves. We cannot tackle any of our challenges without a whole-of-society approach in which everyone steps up to the plate and accepts their responsibilities. These are only some of the policies and programs we aim to implement over the next 5 years to drive economic growth, create jobs and provide opportunities to citizens in the province. We depend on thousands of dedicated and committed professional public servants to do so. And you've just seen how we do that in the big things and in the little things. Before I came in here today, Madam Speaker, you were there when Ms. Donne Stradum and Mr. Michael Mpofu, two of my colleagues, came in and said, "Don't you want a written copy of your speech?" And I said, "Not at all, I've got a computer." And they implied to me that to err is human, but to mess things up completely takes a computer. And so now I've got a clear lesson. If they weren't looking out for me, and if they hadn't asked the DG please to follow the speech on paper as a plan B, I wouldn't be able to have caught up in this way. And that is the millions of ways that our colleagues look out for us and help us in the big things and in the small things every single day. And it is their continuity that makes this government a great success. And I want to thank the DG and all of his colleagues for that commitment that they show every day, not only as partners in this government, keeping us out of trouble and keeping us on the road, but to every single last citizen of this province who deserves our support. We depend on thousands of dedicated and committed professional public servants to do that. We would like to thank them upfront for the work they will be doing during this 5-year term. Our aim is to maintain maximum stability, which is essential for good government. We have, in most instances, forged a strong partnership while respecting the different roles that we play in a democratic dispensation. May it continue in the interests of all of our citizens, and may we make as much progress as we can in creating the conditions for people to improve their own lives. We're all grateful and very humbled by the opportunity to work in government on this historic project of ensuring that South Africa's democracy succeeds the first time round. Very few countries that have made the transition from authoritarian systems to democracy have ever succeeded the first time round. Thanks to the strong opposition that holds the ANC accountable, and thanks to the fact that the voters of at least one province realised how important it is to advance and change governments peacefully through the ballot box. And I'd like to end by thanking the voters of this province very much for being in advance of democracy in this country. Enkosi kakhulu, shukran, baie dankie.